in for Edible Education 101, and I'm here with Jim Barham from the United States Department of Agriculture. Hi, Jim.
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
Good. Thanks for coming. Why don't you give us a bit of an overview of what your work is like?
Yeah, I mean, my official title, although I think it's probably a little misleading, is I'm an agricultural economist, and I work at the Rural Development Agency, which is one of many agencies at USDA. Probably an easier way to kind of understand what I do is I'm part of a kind of department-wide initiative called Know Your Farm, Know Your Food. And I sit on the management team. And it's a fairly large task force. It includes 50, 60 different USDA representatives that really cover all the different agencies at USDA, focused on one specific thing, which is how do we support the development of local regional food systems. So even prior to this initiative being around, it's kind of what I've been doing at USDA for the last 8 years, which is kind of from an economic perspective, not exclusively economic perspective, but looking at how to improve the marketing opportunities for small and mid-sized growers. And it just so happened over the last 8 years, we've seen this massive increase in interest and support for local food systems. And that became kind of our target as we're looking at what are the market opportunities for these small growers. It's certainly not an international market. It's going to be the more localized market. And so a lot of it started with farmers markets, community support agriculture type of things, and then kind of began to scale up from there into other areas.
So if I say, how do you support the development of local and regional food systems, what are you doing?
Basically three things. I mean, the first is certainly financial support, a lot of grants and loans that we offer for food systems development. Secondly is the research piece, which is where I'm probably the most comfortable or what I've done most of my work in, which is looking at, what trends are there, what market trends are existing, where are there new opportunities for growers, what are new technologies that can help the growers tap into certain marketplaces. So they have the research piece, you have the kind of the financial piece, and then we also offer technical assistance. And as my role in food systems has grown and I've become one of the experts at USDA on food hubs and local food distribution and processing, more of my time is spent actually on the technical assistance piece, just helping any, people hear my name and they're like, food hub, this dude at USDA, let me give him a call. And so I hear from these businesses, a lot of emerging businesses, some who have, have just an idea, others who are well established but looking to expand their businesses. And I talk to them, walk them through, and then usually refer them to smarter people who actually run these types of businesses too.
How old is the concept of food hub? It's a relatively new term.
Yeah, I mean, it really starts probably around 2009. Was when the term really started to get some legs. And actually it was here in California. It was really when I've kind
Shocking.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because in the grand scheme of things, there's not as much food hub activity actually in California that we're finding in other parts of the country. But the origination of the term began to develop with a kind of a collaboration of people from Southern California and Northern California talking about farmers markets. And in around 2008, 2009, there was a lot of press in California about kind of the saturation of farmers markets, like, farmers not being, as satisfied with selling at different markets, or there was really long waits for the best markets, and then the new markets they wanted to set up weren't all that great. And so they were thinking, where are there opportunities? And these are a lot of food systems leaders in California for these same growers. And they started talking about this thing called the Farmers Market Hub Network. And so the idea was like, well, there's a lot of restaurants want this food, there's a lot of school districts that want this food, and so why don't we create these hubs at these farmers markets, and then growers are always already going there, and then there could also set up some wholesale accounts, and people could actually come, distributors, chefs, whomever, and actually buy wholesale at these farmers markets. And so that was kind of the origination of the idea. And then as it developed, they realized, well, it doesn't really have to be farmers markets. I mean, it could be anywhere. Anywhere where it's a good aggregation distribution point could actually work. And so it kind of switched from farmers market hubs to food hubs. And then they kind of just tacked on regional food hub because it was a little more scale specific.
So a food hub is a distribution center?
Well, no, not necessarily. And the concept has kind of evolved. At first there was kind of that physical facility piece that was kind of key to the definition of food hubs. But then we had people like Michael Rosine and others that were, well, you want to call them quote unquote virtual food hubs, but didn't have that actual physical infrastructure. So in that case, we wanted to be able to encapsulate a term that both captured what someone like Red Tomato does, but also someone who is set up an online farmers market where there's still aggregation, there's still an intermediary, but at the same time, would allow for also those bricks and mortar types of food hubs as well. So the term itself, or how it's evolved, is really just any business organization that is doing aggregation, marketing, distribution on behalf of farmers for local farmers to local marketplace. And then the functionality of that and how that actually works can be quite diverse.
Have they grown? Are we seeing more and more of them?
Huge uptick.
Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, since 2009, we've seen a 50% growth. We went from close to about 150 2008, 2009, as far as we can tell, and we're over 350 today.
And farms participating?
Yeah, lots. I mean, literally we're talking about, so let's take the 350 food hubs across the country. And there's been enough survey work to understand like about how many food hubs on average work with each, with number of growers. Most of them tend to be small, mid-sized growers. Anywhere from 40 to 100, they tend to be. So just take a number like 50, and you take 350, and you're talking about 14,000, 15,000 producers. Small, mid-sized producers, a lot of those kind of diverse fruit, veg operations. That ends up being a significant chunk of actually small farm, mid-sized farm, working farms in the country. I mean, a good 10, 15%.
Wow,
That's
really impressive.
It's a big deal. And like, we're talking about, most of these, as we kind of define food hubs, they're very social-oriented types of businesses with a primary focus on how do you get more revenue in the pockets of producers so they can maintain their viability. So, you take 10 to 15% of these producers are getting a greater share of the consumer food dollars than they did before. So
and they're all diversified farms. It's not, they're really growing a variety of things.
Generally speaking, yeah.
And how do we define small to medium?
Well, the official USDA definition.
As good as any, I suppose.
So we came out with a new definition. I think it was last year, and Economic Research Service did it, and it's basically small farms with 350,000 or less gross sales, and then we have mid-size, which is around a little less than $1 million to 350. So that's your mid, and then anything over $1 million would be considered a larger.
Okay, it's not done in acres; it's done in dollars.
It has to be, given like if you mix, vegetable with orchards versus other types of production, livestock productions, ends up just making more sense to use the sales.
Okay, last question. It's a little more philosophical than these others, but what's happening here is obviously helping both consumers and existing farmers. And as I travel around the country and talk to farmers, I hear people talking about food hubs and CSAs. And I hear people with farms as small as 2 or 3 acres saying, yeah, this is great, we're making a living, it works. But what I also hear is, I want a farm and I can't find land. Is there anything going on that we don't know about that helps new farmers, that gets people started in this?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the recurring theme, and as we have a whole new generation of farmers that want to come online or have the enthusiasm and the commitment, land is probably the most fundamental barrier of entry for a lot of farmers. There is a number of things USDA is trying to do for that. First is trying to help with food, like farm link type programs, helping to take nonprofits, typically nonprofit organizations who will work with farmers who are on succession planning and see if they can match them up with new growers, whether it's on a lease basis or lease to own basis. We provide support for those nonprofits in that matching kind of farm link program. We also have a lot of funds for incubator programs, farm incubator programs, so that even if you can help find the land, making sure that you're a well-experienced farmer and is going to make the best of that. So there's a lot of really good training programs in that way as well. But it's one of those recurring challenges, and a lot of it is and I've worked with some of these farm link programs, and a lot of it is just personal hand-holding. You can't just set up a database and do matchmaking and match this farmer with this farmer who's retiring with this new farmer here. It gets really complicated, and a lot of it is built on trust, and having well-funded organizations who can be on the ground and play that really hand-holding, trust-building type of role is huge. And it's a cost. It's a huge cost, and USDA doesn't even have that kind of money. Right. But that's also where philanthropy can come in, land trusts and others, to hopefully get over that huge barrier to entry.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mark Bittman for Edible Education 101, and I've been talking with Jim Barham of the USDA.